In 1988, Zev Love X appeared alongside his brother DJ Subroc and formed the group KMD. Welcome to the Book of Doom, Chapter 2, KMD.
Once upon a time, there was a little boy who lived in the deep, dark jungles of Africa. His name was Little Sambo.
The Book of Doom is a series dedicated to the late MF Doom and will be taking you through his life from his early days as Zev Love X to some of his last projects. This chapter will focus on Daniel Dumile's time as Zev Love X and the events that will eventually give birth to the supervillain that we all know and love, MF Doom. KMD, which is an acronym for either causing much damage or a positive cause in a much damaged society, was a trio comprised of Zev Love X, DJ Subroc, and Rodan, who was replaced pretty early on by Onyx the Birthstone Kid, actually right before the group's first record, Mr. Hood. Originally, KMD was really just a crew, at least according to Doom during his interview with Red Bull Music Academy many years ago.
And KMD started out as a graffiti crew?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was really like a crew. Basically, back then we used to have crews that was just crews, you know what I mean? That would listen to music, maybe be artists in general, breakdancing, anything that was like, at the time, we didn't really categorize it like that. Anything that was fun. You know, a crew that you would walk home from school with. And that's just a crew.
Back then, there were crews for everything. And it was really just a group of friends that had common interests and things that they just enjoyed doing together. KMD specifically started out as a graffiti crew, but they slowly shifted over to music. This shift to music and rapping really came about when Zev and the rest of KMD were at a community function, or block party if you will, where MC Search was on stage rapping. MC Search was 1/3 of the group Third Base, which includes Pete Nice and DJ Richie Rich. After the performance, through their connections, KMD got to talking to Search, and shortly after, within a year or so, they were called upon to work on the track Gasface in 1989.
Next up, Don, a special appearance by KMD's Zev Love X. Gasface, can you be a smile?
This is really the first taste of widely available music from KMD, and what's interesting to note is that Gasface is actually produced by Doom, or Zev, himself. That in itself wasn't necessarily common knowledge, and still may not have been if not for Dante Ross.
I knew Doom when he was really young, and Subroc. They were little kids, and he was a prodigy. You know, he was a child prodigy. He, at 17, he really produced Gasface. People don't know that. At 17, 18 years old, he was producing records for people, and Gasface he did the drums on it, the whole shit, and no one knows that.
Shortly after the release of Gasface, Ross sought out Zev and KMD to sign them to Elektra Records for their first album, Mr. Hood. With this album, we're fully introduced to KMD as well as a precursor to Doom's production style. This is really where we get to first experience the way that he and Subroc sampled, which heavily relied on language learning tapes to create this character of Mr. Hood.
Mr. Hood, my favorite customer. What can I do for you today?
I would like to see some gold.
The idea of Mr. Hood as a character, to me at least, comes from KMD wanting to let people know what they're about and who they are. Mr. Hood is someone who isn't too familiar with the neighborhood or the people in it, so by having Mr. Hood travel through the hood, we get a better picture of their surroundings. This project, as well as Black Bastards, was fairly political in nature and called out the oppressive systems in place in the US, many of which continue on today. They also touched on Black empowerment, which was becoming a more common theme around these times for many artists. After this release, the group got to working on their next project, Black Bastards. It was also around this time that Onyx the Birthstone Kid had dropped out from the group, so it was just Zev and Subroc. This album, Black Bastards, intended to take what they did on Mr. Hood and turn it up even further. Unfortunately, right as the album was almost completed, in April of 1993, DJ Subroc was killed while trying to cross the expressway. This left Zev alone to finish up the project in time for its original May 1994 release. However, this project was shelved until 2001, where it was then released by the label Ready Rock. The pushback of the release had little to do with the passing of Subroc. Instead, it was almost entirely due to the album's cover art, which portrayed the Sambo character, a creation of Doom actually, being hung via a game of Hangman. Because Sambo is essentially a reclamation of black caricatures from older cartoons, heads of the labels, they were a little concerned. But the main concern came from Terry Rossi, a Billboard R&B reporter who gathered several people in the industry to go after the record. While it's easy to say that she, as well as others that supported her, likely did not listen to any of KMD's music or knew anything about them personally, it's just as easy to understand where they're coming from. Having what can be seen as a black person being hung as an album cover isn't what most people would want to see and can definitely make people uncomfortable. Due to the recent passing of Subroc, Zev, understandably, wasn't fully there during discussions about the album. Both Dante Ross and his boss, Bob Krasnow, fully supported KMD and whatever Zev wanted to do. But in the end, the album was shelved. What many may not know, though, is that Doom was actually cashed out $25,000 for the project and was given all of his masters back, so it really wasn't a complete wash for him. Eventually, we did get a proper release for Black Bastards, but not until 2001, where it was released by Ready Rock. There was also a release of Black Bastards prior to the official one, where it was just a couple of tracks and mostly demos, and this was the Roughs and Rare tapes. This was an EP originally only available on vinyl from Fondlum Records back in '98. This release definitely lived up to the title of Rough because there was very little mastering on it. Although we did get a full release of the album in '01, it still wasn't fully mastered, it feels. Eventually, we do get to hear the Roughs and Rare version of the album via the deluxe edition, which released in 2015, but even still, it wasn't fully mastered, I feel. This is mostly due to some of the levels of the vocals being a little bit off. Overall, though, this album really does carry on a lot of the same themes that we heard on Mr. Hood, but amplified them. In the years between the albums, KMD grew up as a group and lost Onyx the Birthstone Kid as a member. The growth in that time is likely what caused the shift in sound. Immediately with the first song proper on Black Bastards, we hear a different side of Zev Love X, which to me almost felt like a foreshadowing of Victor Vaughn with his more aggressive intro on Get You Now.
I had to get a shot. The barrel's a double one. Cause my sidewalk got more shells. The bubble gum stuck on it. I'm setting it. Bring it if you want it. And I still got my 22.
Across the board, Black Bastards felt like Zev and Subroc were just fed up and wanted to prove themselves as magnificent MCs. They turned to a more dark and sinister sound on tracks like Get You Now and Gimme, showed listeners that they weren't just kids like their previous works may have made them appear. With Black Bastards, there are few samples in the form of skits like we've seen with Mr. Hood, as well as Doom's future projects. To summarize my thoughts here, this album was a much more serious project than what we had seen previously, and what we would see in the future as well, honestly. There was apparently going to be another KMD tape, originally titled Mental Illness, and then later Crack in Time, that was meant to recount the things that happened between Zev being dropped from the label to when he re-emerged as MF Doom. But since the first time we heard of this from the Wire magazine interview in 2005, we would get really no further information. At least until 2017. In 2017, Doom had a collaboration with Adult Swim where he was just kind of releasing unreleased music. And one of the tracks that got released was True Light Years, which featured Jay Electronica.
Like vest, built to support bras, standard issue for broads, carbon like a sports car. Anybody ask, he retired, tried to hold the villain to task, he was fired.
And the artist that's credited on this, other than Doom and Jay Electronica, is KMD. With this release, Doom had also announced Crack in Time, but we haven't seen anything since then. Even now, no further information has been revealed other than the title, really. Crack in Time joins a handful of other Doom projects that have been mentioned but never released, alongside a proper Madvillainy sequel and Doomstarks. Somewhere between 1994 and 1997, MF Doom was born. He took everything he learned from his time with Elektra and the drama surrounding Black Bastards and created his own lane in the rap game. Join me for the next chapter of the Book of Doom, where I'll take you through Operation Doomsday. Doom's time as Zev Love X is important and can be easily looked over by most, simply because it was so early in his career. Zev Love X as a character or alter ego hasn't shown himself for the remainder of Doom's career, but given more time, I'm sure we would have seen him return. I truly hope you've enjoyed this video. There are still many chapters of the Book of Doom to go through, and I do hope you'll join me as they release throughout the rest of this year. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video, and if you want, share your thoughts on Doom's time as Zev Love X and with KMD, especially if you're around when Mr. Hood first came out. I'm curious to see what the general thoughts on that album was, outside of reviews for it, that is. Make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see further videos like this. Also share it with anyone who's remotely interested in learning about Doom. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.